engaging visualization tools for the general public. Now, Eyes on the Solar System, I'm going to stick my neck out and say it's going to be one of the coolest things I think that you take away from the Tweetup. Everybody raves about it at Juno. I'm just going to stop talking about it in the spirit of it and just let you see this thing because it's incredible. So with that, I'll hand it over to Doug.
Thank you. Show of hands, how many of you have used Eyes on the Solar System? It's like about a third of you. Did you spot something about it? It's like a website, and we don't have any Wi-Fi. We scare because we care. This is going to be Jason's last tweet up, and I just, thank you for all you've done, but I couldn't help myself when I saw you pull his face this morning. Fortunately, we have a plan B, and the reason we don't give you this plan B is because if you can see this up in the corner here, we have an offline version of Eyes on the Solar System with exactly this situation. But the reason we stream everything into your browser is because if we gave you everything up front, there's just over 6 gigabytes of data. About 5 gigabytes of that is just pure trajectory data of all the spacecraft you can go and look at. This is why it's a website that streams content in rather than a big application you download. But I have a plan B. So, for those of you who do not know, Eyes on the Solar System is available at solarsystems.nasa.gov/eyes. And what it is we give you the whole solar system, the planets, their moons, asteroids, comets, and a whole bunch of the spacecraft that have been exploring them all the way from 1950 to 2050. We let you control time, we let you control space, go and explore these places and understand what our spacecraft get us to. And it's important to stress that whilst I'm not using the actual website, I'm just using an offline compiled version of the exact same tool you can drive at home. And this is real-time 3D graphics that you can have inside your web browser. This is not an animation, this is real-time 3D that you can play with when you get home. If you don't, I'll be very angry. And you can think of it in kind of, an interesting way to think about it is think of it as like Google Earth, but inside out. This is everything else in the solar system. And just like Google Earth, the controls will be familiar to you. You grab your mouse, you drag, and you're exploring the solar system. And with the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and you can zoom out. And if you see something that looks interesting, like Juno, for example, you just double-click the mouse and we fly you straight on board Juno. As of right now, this is where Juno is. This is what Juno is doing right now. This is a mixture of data. If you go back in history, we're giving you reconstructed data, things that actually occurred, reconstructed by engineers. Around the present day and into the future, we're giving you predicted data. And on a good day, the predicted data matches the reconstruction, and in most cases it does. But for example, we have a GRAIL trajectory in here I'll show you in a minute, and if we don't go tomorrow morning, then that GRAIL trajectory is going to be wrong for a while until we get a new set of trajectories, we'll put them in here, and we'll sync back up with reality. So just like with something like Google Earth, we give you a whole bunch of controls, and the thing with 1950 to 2050, so you need to be able to control time as well as space. And so along the bottom here, you'll see a bunch of controls, and under dates and time, we just give you a big fat rewind and fast forward. You can just skip forward through time. Suddenly, I'm now in April 2015. If you get a little bit lost and confused, you just hit the Now button, we take you back to the present day. And if you want to look at something happening over time in like a time-lapse mode, we give you that as well. This is the next slide we're on. Right now, we're running in real time, 1 second per second, but the solar system's pretty big, and these things are moving pretty fast, but it's like watching, the hour hand of a clock. Nothing really seems to be happening. Let's crank up the time-lapse mode to a few days per second, and you can watch the solar system doing its thing. Now we have, Jim's talked about the year of the solar system, and all of those missions that he's mentioned are inside this tool. The Epoxy flyby of Comet Hardy 2 is in here. The Stardust Next flyby of Temple 1. We have Aquarius in here. We have Juno in here. We have GRAIL. We have MSL. They're all in here. A combination of reconstructed data and of predicted data. Well, let's go look at, I could show you, things for hours and hours and hours, but I'm just going to show you one thing because we are running late. I'm going to urge you to go and find all the rest of the things when you get home. I'm going to go to the Earth. And back to the present day. It's now September 7th, 2011. If you could fly above the Earth, this is where all of these spacecraft are right now. This is where they are. These are spacecraft here, Aqua, Calypso, and Bora. You see them in a train here. That's on purpose. This is something called the A-Train, a bunch of climate science satellites that fly in a similar orbit, so they're looking at the same patch of ground or atmosphere about the same time, so their instruments all tie together. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, we're going to see some other spacecraft. We've got the TDRS network. These are the tracking and data relay satellites that relay data from the Space Station Shuttle, and actually a bunch of our Earth observing satellites as well. They're in geostationary orbit. If you ride on board these and accelerate time, you'll actually see kind of the Earth nodding backwards and forwards as we go around. You can see what a geostationary orbit is like. If we go back to the Earth, we can ride on board any of these spacecraft. Let's go and look at Aqua. Right now it's somewhere over Antarctica. If you could be on board, that's what it would look like. And you're thinking, well, that's pretty interesting, but I'm getting no real sense of scale here. Let's kind of measure something. And so we give you some tools. We say, well, let's compare it to a scientist. Yeah. Here's our generic scientist. She's standing upside down. So there she is. Compared to Aqua, pretty big. Let's change to the school bus. You notice it runs from the JTL's counter. And we also compare sizes to something a bit bigger. And this really works beautifully for something like the International Space Station or some of our smaller asteroids and things like that. Actually, that's the Rose Bowl capacity. Another tool we give you is the ability to measure tools. We just want to say, well, right now, how far apart are Hubble and WISE? It looks like they're about to crash into one another. It's measuring. Right-click on Hubble, measure distance from, click on WISE, and we bring a real-time tape measure that's updating in real time. As of right now, these two spacecraft, relative to one another, are moving at 22,500 miles per hour, and at 560 miles apart, 555, 550, 545. In orbit, things happen incredibly quickly. Let's zoom out. We've got some the Themis spacecraft here, two of which have left the band and gone to join the moon as Artemis P1 and Artemis P2. The IBEX spacecraft out there. I'm going to fast forward time just through to tomorrow, and let's see what happens. Boom, there they go. GRAIL A and GRAIL B leaving on time tomorrow morning, fingers crossed. One important thing about GRAIL A and GRAIL B is that we're talking about the money saving of that trajectory that it takes, the low delta V required to go into orbit, and the fact that they'll arrive on the same day, regardless of when they launch in their launch window. So once we get into orbit around the moon in eyes on the solar system, things still remain accurate. And we can go on board and have a look at the spacecraft. That's what one of the GRAIL spacecraft looks like. You've seen photographs of them. We hope you agree it's pretty accurate. Now, of course, it's pointing at the sun for solar power. Under visual controls, you can actually turn on the floodlight to get a closer look at the spacecraft. And somewhere out here, if we could find it, is GRAIL B, and you'll find that they're not quite identical twins. That's a question I've got for the engineer later, is what exactly are the differences between the two identical twin spacecraft? And let's go back to the system view, which is this button here that takes us to what these spacecraft are actually looking at. And we can keep accelerating time. If I center myself back up on the Earth, where is it gone? There it is. And run time forwards, watch what happens. These spacecraft are going to go all the way out to L1, where SOHO, ACE, and WIND live. This place where the gravity of the Earth and the Sun roughly cancel out. You'll see the two spacecraft start to diverge so they can schedule their arrival of the moons to be a day apart. I'm going to skip forward a little bit faster. There they go. And you'll see we're now celebrating New Year's with two new spacecraft orbiting the moon. Let's go and have a look. And if any of you tried to answer Jim's trivia contest about a week or so ago, how many spacecraft will be in orbit around the moon, so active spacecraft will be in orbit around the moon when GRAIL A and GRAIL B get there? The answer was 5. GRAIL A, GRAIL B, LRO, and Artemis P1 and Artemis P2. These are actually two spacecraft from a constellation of 5 that used to orbit the Earth, but now have been kind of used slingshot gravity assist to make it all the way out to the moon. And in real time, that's actually how fast these digital spacecraft rotate. Let's take a look at the moon and zoom out just a little bit. And here you can see the spacecraft arriving. If I run in the time-lapse mode a bit more, that's GRAIL A arriving, that's GRAIL B arriving. And you'll see their trajectory change over time. We take a couple of months to take these trajectories and reduce them down to the final science orbits for GRAIL, and eventually we start doing that science towards the end of March. Let's keep going and keep going. You'll see the trajectories change. And finally, come kind of something like March or so, we'll have two spacecraft in their final science orbit around the moon, ready to do their job. Let's keep going. We're still in February here. There we go. And now you'll see GRAIL A and GRAIL B, one chasing the other in a low lunar orbit. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to tell you to give this a try for yourselves. It's still in beta. That white word up there should probably be a little bit bigger. The bugs tend to be browser related. If you do have trouble with it, try a different browser. But I'm going to give you one little parting comment to kind of suggest what might be coming up in the future. I've turned up the stars in the background. And let's see if we can find a constellation somewhere around here. Let's, if anyone spots a constellation they recognize, shout out. I'm not an observational astronomer. Neil, help me.
Is that Orion?
Let's look at these little stars here. They look in a bit of a line. Right? It's not Orion, but here's the whole solar system. Watch the stars in the background.
Whoa.
But that right there is the Pleiades. We actually go behind it. So that's about 3,000 local stars. Keep zooming out. That's essentially the Milky Way. These are now other galaxies. That's the entire observable universe. And from that, we can just hit home and fly straight right back to the solar system. So that is eyes on the solar system. Did you get anaglyph glasses? Could we hand them out? If we've got them, we'll hand them out later because the last punchline I use is that right under here, if you have 3D glasses, we give you a 1970s anaglyph mode, and it really does pop out the screen. In a couple of months, we're going to actually have a whole GRAIL module that talks to you about the spacecraft and especially about moon camp. And school kids around the country are going to be using this tool to schedule when they want to take pictures of those 8 cameras on board the 2 spacecraft. I'm going to wrap it up. Let's take 1 or 2 questions before we move on to the next speaker.
We have our first comment actually from NASA Jim over here.
So, Doug,
Hi.
might you possibly be conducting a workshop anytime soon?
Funny you should mention that, Jim. Friday morning, 10 a.m. in the Mission Status Center, the funny white dome near the space shuttle and the launch experience. There's going to be some librarians, some teachers. If you want a bit more eyes on the solar system fun, come and join me. I'll probably do, how long have I got, like half an hour in there?
1 hour.
1 hour? Wow, we'll do the whole solar system and everything. Come on down and I'll show you more of what this thing can do. Thanks for the reminder.
Questions?
Well, the normal question is, can I get it on my iPad? No one's asked that.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'd love to. Right now, the hardware just isn't quite powerful enough. And what we're doing instead is we're taking subsets of what this can do, turning them into little kind of canned mini versions of this. So we have a sister product to this called Eyes on the Earth that brings in climate science data. And we're doing an Earth Today app that's a reduced version of that for iPhone and iPad. And we're also doing something derived from the orbital mechanics around the Earth here, called Satellite Hunter, where you'll be able to use your phone and find where these Earth-observing satellites are in the sky and kind of collect them one after the other. So we are kind of taking little pieces of it, but I mean, we have just bought an iPad 2, we have an iPad, we have a Droid tablet. We're going to get those sorts of devices and figure out how to put this on those, because the implementation seems obvious. You know, it's made for that format. We just need to figure out a way to do it, because the hardware isn't quite fast enough yet.
University backup time to get
we only do 100 years, and the Big Bang was a little bit before. It was like 1948 or something.
Question here.
Are there any plans to allow just anyone to download the full data set onto their computer so they don't have to stream it, so they can do it offline?
What we're thinking of trying to do, because obviously everyone has to, you know, when you start loading this stuff off the web, you have to download everything each time you use it. So you download the Earth text every time. What we're thinking of doing is having a version that caches content locally. If we become a full software release, there are issues regarding security and things like that. We have to go through a really severe review process. And NASA doesn't want us releasing stuff that's probing to you, essentially. Whereas right now, we are just a website, so we don't go through those rules. But we hope to do something that's going to cache content locally too, so you would actually technically be able to run it offline once you've looked at stuff. And we do want to become something that can, you know, work with outside of the browser, because there are constraints and there are bugs with doing that. So we're going to try and get there, but there are kind of tricky reasons why we're not there yet.
All the way here in the back, Doug.
Hi.
Hey Doug, I was at the Juno Tweetup and loved Eyes on the Solar System. What you didn't cover here, if you could just quickly explain the technology behind this, the video game side of it, basically.
Okay, so have any of you heard of Unity 3D?
Yes.
Right, so this is just Unity 3D. But our programming team has basically ripped the guts out of Unity 3D and started again, because as you can probably guess, there are kind of going from trillions and trillions and trillions of meters down to a spacecraft the size of a birthday cake is a non-trivial programming challenge. And so we just use Unity as a little rendering thing right at the top to get inside your browser. But it's a game engine, and any reasonable laptop, this is my personal MacBook, and it's like 3 years old, something like that. Anything that's 5 years old or it's going to run this actually pretty fine. You can even tell on a high bandwidth mode if you've really got something grunt about it. But it's basically just taking Commodore Garden video game technology and deploying it inside your web browser.
Thank you, Doug. Doug Ellison, everybody. We're going to pause for just a minute while we get the lights back up and the TV going, and I will return momentarily.
Someone buzzed. That's really cool. For a while, I've always wondered, like, where can I tractably sell it? Now I know.
Welcome back, everybody, to NASA's GRAIL Tweetup. We have a few exciting speakers left to hear from today. So I'd like to move on now to GRAIL Moon Camp. This is the signature education and public outreach program for the mission. It's led by Dr. Sally Ride. She was America's first woman in space. And her team at Sally Ride Science in collaboration with undergraduate students at the University of California in San Diego. GRAIL Moon Camp will be used with dedicated cameras on the 2 satellites, and they will engage middle schools across the country in lunar exploration. And here to tell us a little bit more about MoonCam are Lisa Hubbard, the teacher in residence for MoonCam, and Veronica Woo of UC San Diego.
Hi everybody, my name is Veronica Woo, and I'm going to be a 4th-year undergraduate student at the University of California, San Diego, majoring in aerospace engineering, and I'm currently a member at the MoonCam Mission Operations Center at UCSD.
My name is Lisa Hubbard. I'm actually a teacher from Tennessee, and I'm on sabbatical right now, working with Sally Ride Science. I feel like this ties in really well with some of the things that were being discussed earlier about how we get our kids interested in science and math. And Sally Ride Science is doing a lot to that. And I don't know if any of have you heard anything about MoonCam yet? Okay, because it's almost like it's the little known part of GRAIL, which I think is really, really important, because it's the very first time NASA has had a planetary mission that had instruments that were solely dedicated to education and public outreach. So this is a first. Each of the satellites have 4 different cameras, 2 facing forward, aft at 60 degrees, 2 facing straight down that will have different powered lenses. And it's just really, really cool because kids are going to get to take their own photographs of the moon. Yes, Sally Ride Science. All right. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. So, anyway, this is just, it's a really, really cool thing for kids to get involved in. They're going to be able to go to our website and decide where they want to take an image, and Veronica will end up explaining a little bit more about the website and how they're going to do that. But you know, and it's hard to measure the impact of inspiration, but NASA has that. You know, and you never can tell with which kid what the hook is going to be. And we want kids to get more involved in careers that have to do with math, science, technology, engineering. And this is a great way to do that by inspiring them, because they're going to get to be doing real world science by taking these images. They'll be able to go back and annotate them. They'll be able to, they will be shared with the general public in our gallery online. You can also access this. We have an app now. If you go to GRAIL MoonCam, you'll be able to see the images as they come up. You'll be able to track the satellites through that app. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, right, under GRAIL MoonCam. So we hope you'll come there and join us and learn more about it. But I just think it's really, really important, and we really need you to help us get the word out. I'll tell you, a couple years ago at most, I was here at a reception for a shuttle launch and enjoying a beverage, which it's about time for, and I met this person named Flying Jenny, and she was the first person I ever followed on Twitter, and she was so excited. And it's like she also showed me how she combines her love of aerospace with art. And that's what we want our kids to do. We want them to find something that helps them link to it. You know, and maybe some of these images are going to inspire art or poetry, as well as those STEM careers, which would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. But you are using the technology that my kids are into. You are how they will find out about this. So I'm asking you to please, please help us. We want teachers to go to our site and register. We have some teachers that were registered early that were invited to the launch because they were already registered for this. Teachers will register them so that their kids in their classrooms, middle school, can participate. All right? And I know I saw a lot of teachers' hands go up in here. I was really, really excited about that. I'm going to put you on the spot. How many of you teachers will raise your hand now and tell me that, yes, I want to do this with my kids? Come on. All right. How many of you will help us get the word out? All right. I appreciate that. All right. But we want Veronica then to give us a little bit more information about what goes on at the Mission Operations Center, and then we'll take some questions.
Okay, so first I'll just start off with some MoonCam general facts. Currently we have about 400 middle schools and counting schools that are registered for the MoonCam mission, and that's going to be an 80-day mission, approximately the same as the science mission phase of GRAIL. We anticipate on having about 2,500 middle schools by March next year, and we total about 160,000 photos can be taken by both spacecraft, and like Lisa mentioned, there are 4 cameras on each spacecraft, totaling about 8 cameras. The camera system is made by Ecliptic Enterprises, and it's a digital video system, and we have 3 6mm lenses on each camera, as well as a 50mm lens. So during the 80-day mission, we'll have 25 operation windows where students can submit image requests, and we anticipate on having about 100 schools per window. So a little bit about the MoonCam staff in the Mission Operations Center, which is located at UCSD. We'll have about 20 to 25 undergraduate student interns manning the mission. During the mission, we have 5 mission teams. The school outreach team to start off with is responsible for communicating to students, schools, and educational groups, as well as the educators during the mission. So they help with troubleshooting,
take a picture of
image requests, and updating statuses about the mission. The orbits team propagates the lunar ground tracks of GRAIL A and GRAIL B using Satellite Toolkit, or STK, and we get the trajectory information from JPL. The orbits team also targets the offset by comparing the image footprint on STK against the actual image taken. The third team we have is the mission scheduler team. That team manages the photo requests submitted by the students, and they'll be creating the camera capture camera control files, or CCF files, that tell the flight software on the camera system when to take the pictures. Similarly, they'll create download CCFs that tell the software which images to download. The fourth team is the payloads team that electronically receives the images once they've been taken. They'll process the images and then update or upload all of them onto the MoonCam website under images. Lastly, we have the Chiefs team, which is a team that overlooks the entire mission and makes sure everything's going well, and they know a little bit about every station. So, just to reiterate, we'll have the image requests come in from the students. We'll create the CCFs, uplink those, and then those photos will be downloaded and then processed and then put on the web. So, like Lisa said, thank you for listening, and we hope you promote MCAM and encourage teachers to apply.
And you would think that maybe with all the technology out there, kids would be a little bit jaded to this, because we know there are lots of images of the moon out there, but not ones that they took. And that's what makes the difference. Okay, so questions?
Is upper elementary okay?
Upper elementary is probably just fine.
Okay, because I teach advanced 4th grade.
Absolutely.
And so
absolutely.
I know they can handle
Good teachers always bring things down to where they need it or up to where they need it all the time. Right here.
You mentioned. Sorry. Well, I don't. You mentioned that there's already about 100 schools. 400 schools. Is there, from your statistics, state by state, who has the most? You know, is there any trending on that?
Currently, no. But the schools are also international, so that's another thing I learned about there. But yeah, currently we don't have the statistics on that. Sorry.
But if you give me your information, I'll find out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Right here. Sorry, see, it's the teacher in me. I'm used to calling on people. Sorry, I'll let you do that.
Well, I'm not a teacher, but I work in the public library, and I registered. I do special programs with the library. Plus, I'm also an IT person, and I registered our public library for the Moon Cam, so that if any of the schools don't participate in this program, kids can come into the library and request their own pictures. So my suggestion is, if your school is not participating in this, maybe go out to your public library and see if there's a children's librarian or some type of program, and if they don't understand how to do it, maybe you can offer your assistance in helping promote this.
Thank you.
You got a good thing going. You call
it.
Is this available to students internationally or just in the US?
Absolutely. It's worldwide.
From the time the students or the teacher, the class requested, how long before they actually get the picture taken and receive the picture?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the operational windows are from 2 to 4 days. So, for example, if their images are requested on the first and second day, I think we can have them by like the 5th or 6th. So that will be cutting into the next operational window. So we'll have them coincide that way.
10 days. Any other? Everyone up here?
You are going to make me work.
And while it's going there, I'll tell you too, in your bags, you received a little bracelet that says Moon Cam on it. So this can be your reminder to help spread the word. And it is not that particular website, it's celeratescience.com, but we can link you there. It's easy.
What resolution do those images come out as?
So the resolution of the cameras are 720 by 486, and the footprint of the 6mm lens is 55 kilometers by 40 kilometers, making it 77 meters by 83 meters per pixel. And for the 50mm footprint, it would be 6.3 kilometers by 4.7 kilometers, and per pixel, it would be 9 by 10 meters.
Now you know why you need math.
Make this the last question. You call.
Any last one? Way back there. Oh, come on, is there one more just way over here?
Is this available only to public schools or to private homeschoolers?
Absolutely.
Anybody
Private
do?
homeschoolers, absolutely.
Thank you.
We want as many students involved as possible. So thank you very much, and help us get them inspired.
And
Thank you again, Lisa and Veronica, for all the important work that you're doing. Really support. Let's give them one more round of applause. They don't get enough. Okay, next up is Vern Thorp. He is manager of NASA programs at the United Launch Alliance. He has the mission management responsibility for all NASA missions on Atlas and Delta rockets. This includes not only GRAIL, but NASA's next mission to Mars, the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity rover, headed for GRAIL crater launching this November. But he's here to talk about the launch vehicle, and we're excited to have him. So please welcome Vern Thorp.
Good afternoon. I'm Vern Thorp, NASA Program Manager at United Launch Alliance. I'm going to tell you a bit about myself, and you will later. We'll talk about the rocket and see if you have any questions. I'm an engineer by training. I graduated from the University of Minnesota, a bachelor's in aerospace, and I had so much fun I stayed around for a master's degree, specialized in heat transfer and thermodynamics, and started working on launch vehicles in San Diego back in about 1985. And I worked Atlas most of the time. Went off and worked Sea Launch for a year, following it, did a few other things. But I always came back to the Atlas program. And a few years ago, Atlas and Delta were arch rivals in the industry. And 5 years ago, we decided to merge and become best friends, and that's worked pretty well. And I now have responsibility for all the NASA missions that we fly on both Atlas and Delta. And I really like the last talk. I wanted to mention I'm the proud father of 2 kids, a 10-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son. My son is just starting at one of the first STEM schools in Colorado. It just opened its doors a couple of weeks ago in Highlands Ranch. And I'm hoping that the kind of stuff that you guys are doing helps get them hooked on this as well. They're kind of on the fence right now, I think. United Launch Alliance. We are 3,700 men and women across the country. We launch rockets primarily for government customers, but we do a few commercial launches as well. But primarily for the Air Force, a lot of communication satellites, things like that. And for NASA, communication, weather, and exploration satellites. My focus is almost exclusively working with our NASA customers. We've got about 10 missions in the pipeline right now that we're currently integrating. And my job is to lead a team of people who works with the NASA customer to integrate their satellites onto our rockets to make sure we put them where they need to go and to make sure we do that safely and the satellite don't hurt each other on the way up. It's a pretty exciting ride. We are headquartered in Denver. Most of our production takes place in Educator, Alabama. We also do some in Arlington, Texas, and we launch out of both coasts. We launch out of Decatur in Florida and Vandenberg Air Force Base. GRAIL is going to be the 3rd of 5 missions that we're launching for NASA this year. The last one was Geno, and I suspect some of you were probably there for that a few weeks ago. Next up is after GRAIL is going to be a satellite called NPP that will launch out of Vandenberg. That will also go on the Delta rocket. That's going to be kind of a next generation weather satellite. It's going to prove out a lot of technology that the next generation of weather satellites will use. And then finally, we'll be back here in November for the Mars Science Lab mission, which I think is going to draw a big crowd. That's a very exciting mission I'm sure you've heard about. I'll tell you a little bit about the Delta rocket. Delta has been flying since about 1960, and this will be our 259th Delta launch out of Complex 17. This will also be the final launch, at least for the foreseeable future, out of Complex 17. So there's a lot of emotion associated with this launch for people who have worked many decades on flying Deltas out of the Cape. We're going to shoot for a liftoff tomorrow morning about 8:37, actually 6 seconds after 8:37. We have a 1-second launch window. And if we miss that one because of weather or because we're working some technical issue, we have another opportunity about 39 minutes later. So we've got 2 opportunities a day. And if the weather cooperates, we think we'll get off tomorrow. Right now, that's the only concern we have. We don't have any technical issues that we're working. When we lift off, you're going to see 9 solid rocket motors strapped to the base of the vehicle. 6 of those are going to light the lift off. And between that and the core engine on the liquid core, we'll lift off at about 1.3 million pounds of thrust. About 80 seconds into flight, you're going to see those first 6 SRBs burn out and jettison. We'll light the next 3. They'll burn for 80 seconds. Then we'll jettison those. And about 4 minutes and 20 seconds into flight, we'll have used up all the propellant in that booster stage. We'll separate it, light the first or the upper stage for the first of a series of burns. First burn will last about 2.5 minutes. Then we're going to coast about an hour. At that point, we'll be in the right position for the second engine burn that'll send the GRAIL spacecraft with the trajectory that they need. That second burn will last about 4.5 minutes, and when it's done, we'll reorient and separate both of those spacecraft, and that whole sequence will take about 20 minutes. So after liftoff, we'll separate the GRAIL spacecraft into the trajectory they want to be in about an hour and a half later, and the separation will take 10 minutes apart. So that's about how long the mission will last. Once we're done with that, we'll do a series of maneuvers with the vehicle to get it away from the spacecraft, make sure there's no chance of recontact, and then we're actually going to do a very brief third engine burn with the upper stage, and that'll put the stage into a safe orbit between the moon and Mars, so that it won't interfere with any of the future GRAIL operations. So that's what you're going to see tomorrow. If weather cooperates, we're going to get our next weather briefing about 7:30 tonight, and the biggest concern we have right now is whether there's going to be lightning in the area when we're trying to roll the mobile service tower back. But we have quite a long window where we can do that roll, and if everything cooperates, we'll be flying tomorrow. So that's a quick overview of ULA, a quick overview of the Delta rocket, and I'd be happy to take questions or talk about anything else you'd like me to.
From time to time you hear that suggest maybe man-rating the Atlas is the way to go forward. So as someone who worked with Atlas for a long time, what are your feelings about that?
Speaking personally, I'm absolutely in favor of it. Speaking as representative of the ULA, I can tell you that we are in discussions with NASA right now. You're probably familiar with the CCDOV program. It's the Commercial Crew Development Program. And there are 4 potential, I'll call them spacecraft suppliers, the folks who would make the capsule or the winged vehicle, whatever would actually carry the people on the front end. 4 of those folks got contracts in the second round of CCDOV, contracts from NASA. 3 of those companies have selected the Atlas vehicle as their vehicle of choice. So we're working with them to do some early integration work to make sure we understand what it would take to put them on top. And we're also doing some work on our own directly with NASA to explore the human rating issue. We certainly believe it's possible. Humans have flown an Atlas before. John Glenn flew in February 1962. And so we feel that that's in our heritage. We think we have the reliability that it takes. And there's one new system that we're looking at developing that we think would complete the picture and allow us to get human rating. And that is what we call an emergency detection system. It's a fairly simple set of instrumentation that would detect an incipient failure and give you enough time to activate an abort system that would allow the capsule or the winged vehicle to fly safely away from the vehicle before it was damaged. So we think that it's a great idea, and hopefully in a few years we'll make some good progress and we'll be on the verge of flying some of those missions.
Why is it a 1-second launch window?
It's all orbital dynamics. I don't know the details of
how we calculated the orbit for this one, but it's all alignments of the planetary bodies. It's all orbital mechanics. Sometimes with some of our vehicles, we can actually extend that launch vehicle because we can program our flight computer to actually fly back in the optimum trajectory. There's always an optimum second that you want to launch. And if you have enough performance and if your flight computer is capable enough, you can actually open up and launch around that time period and sort of fly to the desired point. The way we've chosen to fly this mission, turns out there are 2 optimal points, and the most straightforward approach was just to target each one of those individually. If we missed the first one because of weather or whatever, target the second one. But it's all orbital mechanics.
If you were going to man-rate the Atlas V, what launch complex would you launch that from? Either 41 or 39?
We could certainly do it for 41. We're talking with NASA about using 39. There's some folks who would like us to come over there, and we're actually exploring that possibility. We've had some of our launch ops folks who are intimately familiar with all the ground interfaces that it takes to launch our vehicle meet with NASA teams several times to take a look at how complex 39 could be modified. I'd say the jury is still out on that. I know there are people who would like us to come over to 39. We're also looking at how can we do it on 41, perhaps building some additional capability out there so that we can launch human missions without interrupting the flow the unmanned missions that we currently fly right now. So both of those are definitely possibilities, and those aren't the two complexes that we're looking at.
Okay, Vern Thorp, everybody. Thank you very much, sir.
Not one, but two spacecraft Lockheed Martin had to build. Stu Spath is the chief spacecraft engineer, if you will. He's here to tell us a little bit about how these came together, what the story was behind building these, and how this remarkable mission of two spacecraft is about to launch tomorrow. So here we go, Stu Spath.
All right, good evening. I'll try to go fast. I know we're a little bit behind. First of all, I was told to expect a very enthusiastic, energetic crowd, so let me hear a woohoo.
Woo!
Okay, let me start by saying I am not a scientist.
Yeah!
But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So if you want to hear a lot of dumb answers, you can ask me a lot of questions about the science, like the gravitation and how we can peer into the interior of the moon. In fact, my science is so limited. Jim Adams, how is the moon like meatloaf?
I don't know, Stu. How is the moon like meatloaf?
Well, everyone recognizes it when they see it, but no one really knows what's in the inside. So that's our goal here, is to find out what's inside the moon. But I'm going to talk about the spacecraft. So again, I'm the chief systems engineer for the spacecraft development. There's two little models here that I'll talk about or point to, and there's a larger model here. Again, if you don't have time to get all your questions in during the actual presentation, please see me afterwards. You can point to a particular component or gadget, and I can tell you what it's for, or at least I can lie, because you won't know otherwise. Okay, so since I want to be in the interactive mode here, I'm going to start by asking how many researched online something about the actual spacecraft before they came here? Almost everyone. So you can be the, I'll ask the questions, you guys provide the answers in the next segment. All right, how much does each GRAIL spacecraft weigh? Yeah, but how many pounds? Excellent. 677 pounds. And by spacecraft standards, that quite frankly is a midget. In fact, we built them small for a reason for this particular mission. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay.
Run away! Run away!
All right, thank you. Okay, so for the Juno launch just a few weeks ago. Should I go to the podium?
The mic only works for science.
Okay. Is there an engineer in the house? Okay, I'll do the best I can to minimize the echo and just bear with me. All right, so 677 pounds is about 7,000 pounds less than the Juno spacecraft that just launched a few weeks ago. So it's small for a reason. We don't like a lot of warping, and it has to be very stiff for this particular mission. As you saw. Hello? Hello? Okay. So the small design keeps it very stiff, keeps it very stable. All right. Lockheed Martin did not. Okay. All right, I'm going to go open loop here. Can everyone hear me?
let's talk about power. How much power does do the two solar arrays for each spacecraft generate? 700 watts. Both spacecraft together would power one hair dryer. That's not much. In fact, I don't use one of those, but I'm sure many of you used them this morning. So that's not a lot of energy. We have to be very creative on generating low energy, very efficient power-wise components and so forth to be able to operate a complete spacecraft that far into deep space with only 750 watts. When we're not pointing at the sun with the solar rays, what do we use for power? Battery, of course, right? How many amp hours does the GRAIL battery have? 30 amp hours. That's less than a car battery. The normal car battery is about 40 amp hours, so also pretty small. So our resources in space are limited. We have to get the most that we can out of those. All right, let's talk about downlink.
All right. The background mics. You guys want to go no mic?
No mic.
I'll just keep going, no mic. It's really not my fault. Downlink rate. How many bits per second do we get at our maximum downlink rate? Anyone? 128K. 128K. Well done. Cheater. So, how many of you still use a 56K modem at home? Yeah, right. Can you imagine a full spacecraft using that? Yeah, well, you are now. So that's not a lot of bandwidth. So the reason we can get away with that is because the gravity data that you heard so much about today is not high volume data. It's very tight compression-wise. You get a lot of data for a very few number of bits. So we don't need a big antenna. We don't need a big downlink rate. All right, next fun fact. How many temp sensors and heaters do we have on board? 101 temp sensors and 158 different heaters. These are all controlled autonomously by the flight software. So if a particular component gets cold, gets too hot, the software is smart enough to turn on or off the heater to keep everything within operating ranges. So it's all autonomous. The ground operators, hopefully, don't have to do a whole lot to keep everything within limits. All right, let's talk fuel. Moon's a long way away. How much fuel do we carry in gallons? 29 gallons. That's the size of about a large SUV. That's not a lot. In fact, how many gallons does it take to get to the moon? 1 gallon. Of course, Vern will say that the ULA guys provide a lot of the thrust, but 1 gallon to get to the moon. And then another 7 gallons to slow down and get captured around the moon. So that's pretty efficient. By my calculation, we're over 1 million miles per gallon. That beats the Prius, I think. All right, let's see. Separation. You know the two spacecraft fly separated to get the ranging information between them. How far apart are they in miles? About 100 miles. So from here, drive north up the coast. When you hit St. Augustine, you've got about the separation between the two GRAIL spacecraft. And then how high do they fly? About 50 kilometers or 33 miles. That's about 120 Sears towers stacked on each other. So that's pretty good altitude. All right, one last thing. We talked, I think Vern mentioned about the spacecraft being identical. They're not quite identical. There's a few differences. I don't know if you'll be able to see them on the models up here, but I can point them out. One thing is the star trackers are canted about 30 to 40 degrees in opposite directions. We do that so that when we're in orbit, if the lunar surface is here, they're canted away from the lunar surface. We don't want a bunch of bright albedo or reflection off the surface of the moon to interfere with our star tracker performance and prove it, have problems with its performance. The other thing, you heard about the moon cams. Those are oriented on a different side of the spacecraft because each spacecraft flies with a different side pointed nadir. So the camera heads have been mounted on the other side. So that's basically the differences between the two. So other than meatloaf questions, anyone have questions about the spacecraft? Yeah.
Do you guys have the ability to change the software? I know they did that for the rovers at one point. So if there's a bug or something, you can fix it down the line.
Absolutely. The question was about flight software patching. We call that the patch process. Over the last 12 missions on Lockheed Martin missions that I've been associated with, we've patched about 90 times roughly. So, we do have the capability, and we use it about every 6 months to a year generally. Yes?
Was the design more based on weight requirements or sensory requirements, or did you kind of have the customize?
Okay, the question was, how did the design come about? Was it based on weight, sensor requirements, and so forth? It's all of the above. You saw Maria talk about the actual science requirements. We have certain allocation by the launch vehicle folks and so forth, and we flow all those requirements down to the spacecraft, and then from there, me and my team, we try to figure out, hey, what's the best design that'll meet this mission? So every one of our spacecraft designs, unlike the ComSats that they turn them out one after another, every one of ours is a unique design, and so they do one-of-a-kind design for each mission. Yes?
What's the most expensive component?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say the flight computer. It's a computer. The computer we build in-house at Lockheed Martin. Roughly $8 million, give or take, for the flight computer. Star Tracker is also expensive. The transponder, the communication radio, is pretty expensive. Yes?
What happens to these twins when you're done with them?
That's a good question. What happens with the twins when the mission's over? Well, first of all, you heard Maria talk a little bit about a potential extended mission. That's not a done deal by any means, but we on the spacecraft team think that the battery and the spacecraft is capable of surviving a lunar eclipse, and so it would be available for an extended mission if that's the way we decided to go. But if not, the current plan would be to let them deorbit into the surface, perhaps take pictures with the moon cam as we did that. So essentially let them spiral in.
One more?
One more.
What type of propellant does the girls have to use?
The question was what type of propellant. It's a fuel called hydrazine. It's what we use in all the Lockheed Martin missions, very similar to kerosene, if you will. And it's a monoprop system, so we don't have an oxidizer on board that for a biprop system. All right. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, that's what we want. We're going to hold this microphone. We're not going to hear this microphone, but everyone online can. Which is a pretty good compromise.
Yeah.
You guys cool with sticking around to hear from Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah.
I thought you might do it. He is an astrophysicist, and no way. Goofist, nice job. Nicely done. Neil deGrasse Tyson is an astrophysicist and the Frederick P. Director at the American Museum of Natural History's Hyden Planetarium in New York. You may know him best from PBS Nova 4-part miniseries Origins, or the PBS Nova spin-off program Nova Science Now. You may have read one of his many books, including the memoir Sky's Not the Limit: Adventures of an Urban Astrophysicist, in the New York Times best-selling Death by Black Hole and Other Cosmic Quandaries. You may have seen him recently on The Daily Show. I believe he is still the most frequent guest on the Colbert Report. Over anybody else, I'm sorry, the report. He has twice been asked by the White House to be on presidential commissions on space. He was recently on Time Magazine's list of 100 most influential people. His Twitter list also made the 140 most influential. And if that wasn't enough, 2000 People magazine voted him the sexiest astrophysicist alive. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Thank you. So, evidence that the microphone now works and didn't work for our previous speaker. We need an alien check on that. Anyways, I thought if this is a tweet up, I shouldn't give a talk without tweeting. So I'm about to submit a tweet. The solar system. Asteroids, comets, planets, and moons. A 3D billiard ballet choreographed by the forces of gravity. Tweet. We heard that at the end of the GRAIL mission, what did you say? They will be deorbited? Was that your comment? That's code for crash landing on the surface. Let us not be fooled by this language. I'm really here to tie a bow on this afternoon. You've been here quite some time in those seats. And I didn't build the spacecraft. I'm not launching it. I'm not the PI. I'm here to reflect on what it is to actually engage in this kind of enterprise. And the way I want to do that is to remind us of how limited our view of the world is. We have our traditional 5 senses. We can recite them. We probably have more senses than that, but let's go for the big 5, right? There's your sense of sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, right? The most useful of those in the universe is our sense of sight. That gets you information from farther away than anything else. Of course, probably the least useful in the universe is your sense of taste. You can't taste a black hole. You wouldn't want to do that. Anyway, I'm just saying. Now, we might have other senses. For example, our sense of balance. You know, there are other things you might add into that 5, but those are the big 5. All right, now, if we look at our sense of smell and sense of taste, our trajectory through the tree of life tells us that if we see a rotting, vermin-infested corpse, we want to walk away from that. It smells bad to us. It tastes bad to us. It'll make you sick. Whereas vultures, hyenas, there's a whole part of the animal kingdom for whom that smells like hors d'oeuvres from a fine restaurant. So their senses are bringing a different picture of the world to them than our senses bring to us. Now, it was not until we were in a position as a species to replace our senses with tools that are not susceptible to what your brain does to the signals that your senses receive from the natural world. It was not until then that we could claim that science was born. Modern science. That's traceable basically to early 1600s. Galileo, among others. That's the invention, at that time, the invention of the telescope. Just a couple of years after the invention of the microscope. These are tools that take us places that our senses can't, that allow us to measure things without the susceptibility of the human brain getting in the way. We like to praise our brain as being a powerful organ. We like to praise our sight as being an extraordinary device, the human eye. However, what we learned in the discoveries of the methods and tools of science is that our sensory system is not only feeble, it deceives us. You cannot claim to understand the universe through sensory devices where half the time they're giving you the wrong information or allowing you to interpret it the wrong way. And what do I mean by wrong? It's because you get a different result than somebody else does. It smells different to you than to the carrion smells different to you. The sunset looks different to you than it does to insects. Insects, most flying insects, see ultraviolet light. We cannot. They have much more beautiful sunsets than we do. By the way, evidence that we are smarter than insects is that we can devise tools to kill them, exploiting this fact that they see ultraviolet. Who here has seen, owned, or observed bug zappers? What is the color of the light inside the bug zapper? It's blue. And what attracts them is not even the blue, it's actually giving off some ultraviolet. They can't help it. They fly into it. They get zapped. In fact, their entire sensitivity to light is shifted towards the blue, towards the violet, to the point where they can't see red or orange. So there's another kind of bulb, which used to be common, called a bug bulb. That's an orange bulb. You put it over your picnic table. People used to think that it repelled bugs. No. What does it do? The bugs can't see it. They don't even know it's there. So unless they're coming to your food, they're certainly not attracted to that light. So we've exploited this intelligence that we have about bugs. More evidence that we're smarter than cats. I heard a comedian joke about it. Evidence that we're smarter than cats because we're not afraid of vacuum cleaners, right? We need to be reminded of our intelligence every now and then. The point is that our senses are not the whole story. The simplest variant on this is that visible light, famously labeled Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Newton put the indigo in there. Doesn't really belong. If you're going to divide up the spectrum that finely and call something indigo there, there's 10 other colors you could have also added. Okay? But Newton was a big fan of the numeral 7. He had some mystical, magical feelings about 7. So there's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Had to throw in a 7th color, hence indigo. Okay? There you have it. But it spells Roy G. Biv. It's fine. I'm okay with that. We build telescopes to observe in these wavelengths of light. We look up into the cosmos. It was not until the 19th century that we had any clue that other bands of light were available to us. The universe was speaking to us outside of our ability to detect it. The universe was sending us ultraviolet, infrared. Let's go in one direction. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. This is all part of the electromagnetic spectrum of light. It all travels the speed of light. And the universe is talking to us in each one of these bands of light. You go the other way, from red, infrared, microwaves, radio waves. That's the part of the spectrum headed off in the other direction. The 19th and 20th century, one of the unheralded advances of these 2 centuries is our ability to not only know these bands of light are there, but to exploit them with the methods and tools of engineering and of science. We don't have detectors for ultraviolet. Well, you sort of do. It's your skin, and by the time you know you've been exposed to ultraviolet, it's a little too late. Okay? These are time-delayed detectors, if you want to call it that. How about X-rays, gamma rays? We sort of have gamma ray detectors. It's when your arm falls off, right? Oh, I was exposed to gamma rays earlier. Old-timers here might remember, if you ever worked around radioactive materials, you had a radiation badge. You know what that was? It was film. There's some younger people here. Film. It was made of plastic and it had like a silver, it had a chemical on it. A chemical on it that could detect. Okay. I needed that explanation. So it was a badge, and there were different thicknesses of lead pellets sitting above it. And so at the end of the day, you take it in, they would develop the film, and then inform you later on whether or not you're sterile, okay? So, we sort of have detectors for these things, but they're not useful detectors to us. Infrared, you can't see it. Your skin senses it as heat. Microwaves, we have no microwave detectors at all. It's all based now on your cell phones. If you could see microwaves, everyone on a cell phone, this would be ablaze with light. It would be passing through the walls. If you could see microwaves, you tune to that, all these walls would be transparent. You'd accidentally be walking into them the way we walk into windows, which are themselves transparent to visible light. So, the transparency of something is really just what kind of wavelength of light are you using. That also applies to the universe. The universe is most transparent to radio waves, because other bands of light get obscured by dust clouds and other interstellar phenomena that simply gets in the way. So it was not until we had radio telescopes that we could peer deep into the center of the galaxy. It wasn't until we had ultraviolet telescopes and X-ray telescopes that we could find black holes. Books published in the 1950s and 60s talked about the clockwork universe, the universe, the beautiful, serene universe. That's our bias kicking in. We were only viewing the universe in optical light, visible light. Once you had the X-ray telescope and the gamma ray telescope and the ultraviolet telescope, you begin to see explosions going on in the centers of galaxies, collisions of stars and galaxies. Textbooks published started calling it the violent universe. A dangerous place out there. Now, if we look at our senses, if our senses define your life and your expectations, I could take this bottle and I let go of it. So embedded we are in our senses that the very statement let go means drop it. When in space, if you just let go, you let go and it's still floating. Let go means something different in space than it does here on Earth. So once again, your life experience is influencing how you're interacting with the world. So, if you now look at the frontier of cosmic discovery, until the 1900s, you could judge a physical law based on whether or not it made sense to you. You could do that. That doesn't make sense. It can't be true. What happens in 1900? The quantum is discovered. 1905, relativity is advanced by Einstein. 1916, general relativity is published. 1920s, we discover the expanding universe. Hubble, the man. He was a person before he was a telescope. Yes, he did. She was aware that Edwin Hubble was a basketball player. He also had an affected British accent, and which some Americans do because they're embarrassed by their own accent. Plus, he was also a racist and a misogynist. Something like that. Yet we can still praise him for his scientific discoveries. This is the interesting thing about science. If you get it right, it transcends even who you are. So, as the weirdness of the universe is laid bare by these new understandings of the quantum, the physics of the small, and general relativity, the physics of the large, all of a sudden, we are probing the world in regimes outside of anything your senses possibly saw in your entire life. So now I can tell you, particles pop in and out of existence. The whole universe is expanding and was once smaller than the head of a pin. And you say to yourself, that doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't issue forth from your five senses. And that is what defines within us what makes sense. If I dropped this and it fell to the ceiling, you would say that doesn't make sense. But in a quantum universe, that happens 20% of the time. If we were the size of a quantum, stuff would be happening. People would pop in through the wall, out the wall, and you say, oh, hey, Joe, you know. It's like, no, it would not even be an issue to you because of your life experience. If we were the size of the quantum, E equals mc squared would not have required Einstein to deduce because we would have seen that formula manifest daily in front of our eyes. So we live in a time where it is no longer sensible to require that a theory of the universe makes sense. All that matters is that it's consistent with the data. And those theories of the universe and those observations that we come up with, they come from methods that not only extend our senses, but bring in whole other categories of sensory readings of the world around us. The spectrum is a natural understanding of an extension of our senses, not only in wavelength, but in sensitivity. That's one. There are other senses we don't have. We don't have magnetic field detectors within us. We are magnetic field blind. We got tools for that. I got an app for that, right? I got it, right? You can't detect, there's an obscure property of light called polarization. Our eye cannot detect the polarization of light. You can if you have Polaroid sunglasses, you can do this experiment, but without them, your human physiology cannot accomplish this. You know what else you can't accomplish? You can't detect changes, subtle changes in gravitational field. You can't. If this part of the room, the gravity vector, were not parallel to here, I would walk over here and then I'd be leaning and I wouldn't even know I was leaning. In fact, evidence that that's the case is why people in Australia don't know they're upside down. Nobody told them. Okay? Because you just walk around on Earth, slowly the gravity vector is switching, and you're switching with the gravity vector. And then you come around the back side, you are upside down and you don't even know it. So here we are. We're trying to probe the moon. The surface is easy. We've been there. More places on the surface to observe, but we got an understanding of the surface. But the surface has revealed elements about the moon that require knowledge of what was going on beneath it that we don't yet have. Now, you can't X-ray the moon. X-ray has some penetration depth, not enough. You got to be cleverer than that. So what you have clever PIs, you have clever engineers who say, let's find the gravity vectors of the moon. If gravity is a little stronger here than there, maybe it's a little more dense over there. There's a little more material between this object and the center of the moon over here than over here. If you do this continuously, you can map the gravitational structure of the moon and infer the mass profile of what's going on down into its center. That is building a machine that is beyond our senses, decoding the universe for us and bringing it to us on a silver platter. So NASA has been all about extending our senses. And once you have a well-designed experiment, then it's the results of that experiment that you then must contend with and deduce what it forces you to think. This gravity measurement that has been going on, oil companies use them. Why? What are they looking for? Oil, yes, oil. Okay. So, it's not a trick question. I ask simple questions here. Oil, they're looking for oil. Oil is less dense than rock. Okay? Heavy, thick, sludgy oil is less dense than water. That's why oil floats. Heavy, thick whipping cream is lighter than skim milk. That's why it floats. I got to tell you real quick. I was in a little coffee shop in Pasadena. I don't even like coffee. I had hot chocolate. And the only way to have hot chocolate is with a dollop of whipped cream. So I ordered my hot chocolate with whipped cream. I didn't see any trace of whipped cream on the top. I said, I ordered this with whipped cream. He said, oh, we already put it on. I said, well, where is it? He said, oh, it sunk to the bottom. Of all the people you're going to tell that to, I am the wrong one to make that statement. I felt like, Clint Eastwood or something. It's like, so I said, excuse me, either the laws of physics of the universe are different in your coffee shop, or you did not put cream on this coffee, because the cream would float. And he said, no, it sinks. I said, just go back, put the cream on, and let's do the experiment together. Right? So gets the cream, puts the cream in, and it bobs down down one and pops up, floats. He said, "Wow, look at that!" By the way, how else do you think skim milk got its name? You skimmed the cream, the heavy, thick cream, off the top. And if you float, it means you are lighter than the stuff below. Technically, less dense. My point of all this, that was a long aside. I don't even I know you're hungry. Sorry. Sitting here for 5 hours. So the point is, we've been thinking about gravity for a while. One of the most fertile places to look for oil is the Gulf. Sorry, our Gulf. Any Gulf, probably, but there's the Persian Gulf, and then there's the Gulf of Mexico. Oil companies are all throughout there. You go down there, Galveston, Texas, you see oil rigs out there in the Gulf. There was a measurement made, a gravimetric measurement made of the Gulf region. The Gulf is enclosed by, from your view, you have Mexico coming down and hooking under before you get to the various islands of the Caribbean. They found gravity anomalies in the Gulf. They started tracking them, and it formed a ridge buried beneath the sands. There was a ridge of concentrated material. And so they followed the ridge, and it made a circle 150 miles across. And they said, "Ooh, how do you get a circle that big of distorted landmass?" They went down there to get a date for when that circle was made. 65 million years ago, that circle was laid down just off the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico. What else happened 65 million years ago? That was a high-pitched dinosaur. Yeah, that was. He said dinosaur. Let's say that on the microphone so all of NASA TV can hear you. Showing me her octave range there. So we found the smoking gun, the crater that was laid at the time the dinosaurs went extinct by gravimetric measurement made by oil companies searching for oil. We define who and what we are as a culture by our power to see the world in ways where our senses are left way behind. Period. People say seeing is believing. No, it's not. What are these books we have? Optical illusion books? We call them optical illusion. Is that really what we should call these books? I don't think so. We should call them brain failures. That's what they are. Simple line drawing. Is it in the page? Out of the page? I can't figure it out. Oh, what is that? I don't know. Brain failures. A failure of your sensory system to understand what you're looking at. Period. So every time someone comes running forth, tells me they saw something, therefore it must be as they saw it. I said, sorry, it's not good enough. Could be a UFO. Could be, even if they like hung out with aliens. When you come back the next day, drag the alien with you, okay? I don't care. Put that on the floor. Then we can have that conversation. Your senses are not useful to me. They're just not. And so I celebrate the legacy of NASA, the legacy of its science missions, the legacy of what it is to explore going where no one has gone before, relying not only on what an astronaut tells you, but on images and on chart recorders and on every possible way you can probe what it is you don't otherwise understand. Because therein is the power of what it is to explore, armed with the methods and tools of science, enabled by the creativity of engineers. And that is this marriage that has existed ever since the beginning of the birth of science. And I made a little note of, just see if I covered all my things here. Well, I change this tape. Got that tape going? Oh, yeah, got that. Oh, yeah. Okay. Should you guys have all like been at work today? Is the unemployment rate that high? You all like playing hooky today? Is that right? Oh, okay. Who here is actually not playing hooky because you actually don't have a job and you're looking for a job? Okay, so this is a marvelous thing to do when you're unemployed. Because it costs you because you paid to come down here. But I think this is like an adult field trip. Research in education has shown that children, when they go on field trips, they remember them long into adulthood. Every one of us remembers trips you went on in 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Even if you don't remember the teacher or anything, other details, you remember you went on that trip and what you visited. And my fear is that not enough of that happens in adulthood. We become jaded. We forget what it is to ask questions and to explore. We become, I think we, well, she said we get pathetic. I was trying to be a little more well, she said apathetic. No, okay, so we become pathetic. Speak for yourself. All right.
Self-complacent.
I'm going to finish up in a minute here. Just in terms of what it is, a scientist is someone who actually just never grew up. That's really what a scientist is. We spend a year teaching children that are freshly born, the first 2 years of their life, we teach them how to walk and talk. We spend the rest of their lives telling them to shut up and sit down. This is how we interact. The kid wants to jump 2 feet into a mud puddle. You say, no, don't do that. You'll get your shoes dirty. You'll get your clothing dirty. You've just removed the possibility of an experiment in cratering that that child could have executed. I'm just saying.
Just saying.
Anyhow, so let me close out. You guys are on a frontier, an experiment, really, that NASA's conducting to disseminate the love and the science and the vision and the mission, not only the missions, but the mission statements to the broader public through social media. And it was an honor to address you guys, because you're not just regular folk, you're tweeps. Which is, I'm sure there's a universe where that is such an insult. Right? You so here it is a badge of honor, and you're certainly wearing them all now. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow at the lunch. Thank you.
Just a reminder that NASA coverage of tomorrow's GRAIL launch will start at 6 a.m. You can find out all the latest information on nasa.gov, and be sure to follow the conversation continuing from the NASA Tweetup at twitter.com/NASA Tweetup. So thank you again. Go GRAIL.
We all?
So, I want to turn it over to someone who definitely deserves a huge round of applause, and that's Stephanie Sharon, who helped
I'm just the one who sends you emails. and tries to keep the logistics working. Thank you so much for being patient with us today with our many technical and logistical problems. We appreciate your patience, and we're glad to have you here. We're so glad that you came. And hopefully, like Pilonaut said, even a bad tech problem at a NASA Tweetup is better than even a All right, so we're going to take a group photo. It was supposed to be in the Rocket Garden, but it's raining. So the lobby that you walked in when you came in, we're going to do the group photo in there. Our awesome NASA photographer, Bill Ingalls.
Woo!
And tweets from @NASA HQ Photo is going to take a group photo of all of us. After that, you're dismissed for the evening, and then we'll reconvene it tomorrow morning. So you need to be at the parking lot tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. so that we can board and depart on our buses by 6:30 a.m. This is, of course, assuming that we're go for launch. And follow Twitter, right, for updates, especially at NASA Gym. And so the parking lot is not any of the places you've been before yet. It is on State Road 405, just past US 1. It's by the Astronaut Hall of Fame. You have directions in your emails. I will send you another email tonight with a link and directions. There are huge signs that say NASA Tweetup parking. So that lot is for us. You can park in that lot, and we'll have buses there that we can board. You can bring chairs, but not like the folding kind, like the collapse into a cylinder kind. So does everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So you can bring a chair if you want, and you can bring an umbrella, and you can bring a poncho, and probably some bug spray, and maybe if we're lucky, some sunscreen. And there are going to be porta potties there, and there will be food for sale, but you can also, if you want to bring some small food, you can't bring a cooler, but you can bring food with you. Just to clarify from my email last night, which had conflicting information about your visitor complex ticket, the visitor complex has changed their ticketing system. The ticket is good for one visit to the visitor complex. You didn't use it today, so you can use it any day between tomorrow and September 13th, and that will get you full admission to the visitor complex, including the tours, if you want to go on another tour, and including the shuttle launch experience. And you can give that away if you don't need the ticket, or you can give it back to me, and I'll give it away. And tomorrow there are some activities going on. Neil Tyson will be talking at 1 o'clock doing Q&A, and I'll be moderating that with him. And Lieutenant Uhura will be signing autographs. I think that's at 2:30 p.m. And I know many of you are joining the Lunch with an Astronaut with Charlie Duke. So there's lots of activities tomorrow. Then on Friday there's the solar system demo with Doug Ellison again, the workshop, if you want to go to that. So you have lots of options. Are there any questions?
Will you or someone tweet the meteorological prognosis tomorrow morning?
Yes, we will tweet as much information as we have about the meteorological process and what the status is for launch. Also at NASA should be tweeting that. And I sent you, while we're sitting here, a PAO update. If I get another one of those, I will be happy to forward that along. So I will be sharing as much information as I can. Yes. Okay, so come up, and then if there are any other questions, I'll answer them as she's coming up. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys for hanging in. I know it's been a long day, and listen to this announcement.
Hi, I'm Susan again. I'm the person on the Facebook group that was helping organize the patch orders. And this is this patch that we designed for the Tweetup. Unfortunately, evidently due to the storm last week, it messed up the shipping schedule for the patches. So they're actually being delivered tomorrow after the launch. So I'm driving to Titusville to pick them up. If you ordered a patch want a patch, we have extras, you need to find me tomorrow, probably on the Causeway. There are two options. If you can pick up a patch at the visitor center, like at lunch or after, they're $3 to pick up in person. The patches are a little under $3, but we're going to donate the extra money to the Endless Barbecue if we can figure that out. If you need them to be mailed to you, which I realize not everyone's coming back here, they're $4 because it's $1.08 to mail a patch because they're 4 inches, round. So what I need from you is either tweet at me, like DM me your address, and you can either PayPal me $4, or it'd be better if you could just pay me $4 tomorrow on the Causeway. Laurie Bertrand over there actually paid for these patches in advance, so we have 250 of them to sell. Okay, that's all. Right. Wait, there's one more.
What about multiple orders?
Yes, that's multiple orders. There's still $3 if you can pick them up in person. Same thing. If they need to be mailed, 2 patches will cost an extra $1 weight-wise, but once we get above 2 patches, if you're ordering, like if you have 4 patches, we're still only asking for $2 shipping. Just talk to me. Okay.
What's your handle?
At Susan Bell Film, as in filmmaker. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Just one more. Hi, I'm Chris. If you haven't heard yet, if you haven't had a chance to yet, the posters were in the back corner. There's black and silver markers, so if you have just a second to sign them, go ahead.
NASA Tweetup team, did I miss anything that we need to remind people of?
And did they bring their stuff or leave it here?
For the group photo? While we take a group photo, you can leave your stuff here. I think we're the only ones left, probably. One more. Wait.
Spacecraft USA would like a group photo of all alumni that we take after the main group.
After the main group photo, Space Camp alumni want to take their own photo. So if you are Space Camp alum, plan to be in that photo. So we will convene in the lobby for a group photo.
Yeah. I'm happy to. And you have a really awesome solar eclipse coming in November of 2012. Please find a way to get me there. And for those of you who are already there, don't leave in November of 2012. This is going to be a nice long duration solar eclipse. And in fact, if you're at the Great Barrier Reef, look at the fish under the sea, roll on your back, enjoy the solar eclipse, and then look at how weird the fish are. Because fish get confused by solar eclipses and they start jumping out of the water.
Do you really?
It's night and looking for the bugs to eat.
Oh.
And we have the scary helicopters coming by again, which means we must still be go for lunch.
We got 4 minutes.
Really?
It's 9:04. Make up your mind now. Come on, GRAIL. Flying Watchdog says Pamela has a good following in New Zealand too. Yay. What's that?
Pamela, if you'd like to come,
yes!
Tweet up in Cairns. It's really.
All right, we are now recording. We're on internal power, and we are now releasing hold.
Cool. Okay. Cool. I'm going to. You gotta figure out how to time it. You guys ready to see a launch?
Yeah!
We have 4 minutes. I can go get my bag to sit on.
Boy, 3rd times really is a charm.
I was hoping so.
3 minutes and 59 seconds. We are go. Everyone's posting. We are go. We are go.
We're out of balloons.
We're done.
We're out of the red ones. Doug Ellison went and took them all away.
Don't knock the flip there. I don't want to continue my. Oh, you know what? Yeah.
Visually, it'll be right.
No, you're good. Just you're right on the tripod, so if you bump it. You are awesome. Would you like to sit on my mat?
Good.
Huh? I can take the cameras off that.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting.
Okay, we have 3 minutes. Yes, that would probably be.
Pamela Robinson, I was in Cairns on Wednesday, and there were tourist brochures in the hotel advertising the eclipse. Anyway, enjoy the launch.
I just learned there is a at Tarn's eclipse tweet up planned. So Google search, get involved. You can go out and tweet up the sun disappearing behind the moon. Woo.
I love the fact that like you're doing double duty. You hit the launch and you're like entertaining my viewers.
I haven't figured out how I'm getting there yet.
So far, 13 people in the stream.
Yep.
No. Everybody wave. Everybody wave.
T-minus 2 minutes.
Tell me when we're like 1.5. I'll turn my camera on.
Gotcha. Oh shoot! I'm gonna have to start this. Go for launch! Woo! Oh crap! The camera's in the way. Uh-oh. Your camera's. I just noticed your camera's in the way. I gotta move this.
No.
Hold on.
I didn't move it.
I think it's because you raised it up a bit.
A long time ago.
Yeah. Hold on.
Both the boxes 135 on the different. There's been a vote every time. Past few months.
God, it's even harder to see. 50. T-minus 1 minute. Karen down there. Yeah!
Wow. Oh, that thing is so slow.
Go GRAIL!
And into the cloud.
Gone.
Awesome.
Woo! Wow!
Do us proud, GRAIL.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
There it is. Awesome. Come back. No, come back. I'm watching you before I describe it. Go to the moon right now. So cool. At some point, the curvature of the Earth will diminish from view, but until then, yeah, you can just see it a little bit still. Well, I can't see it. I can't yet see any dot. You can make green laser pointer. No. There it's done now. Yay, GRAIL! Alright, let me take a picture with the trail behind me. That's your traditional speed. Here. Let me try one that makes it flash just so we
Pamela. Robin's saying, hey, Robin says, hey, GRAIL has gone into Tron mode on NASA TV. 1 minute until Tamiko. That was amazing.
There you go. Okay, kind of thing. Ready? 5, 1, 2, 3. One more. There you go. Okay. You can't. I'm going to Photoshop. That first one. My eyes are closed, literally.
Oh, yeah. Watch out. Gotta get back.
I will be happy when they're out of there.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, this is great. No, heck no. So of course here from Cape Canaveral, Florida, the part of the GRAIL NASA Tweetup.